Welcome to the Digital Amateur Television Experimenters Night. This is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania. Amateur radio is a worldwide hobby that has many different aspects. Digital television is just one of the many modes and areas that are covered. Maybe you're interested in becoming involved in the DATV Experimenters Nights. You realise that you do not have to be a radio amateur or need any ATV equipment to participate anywhere in the world. Also participate on the night by coming up to the Queen's Domain club rooms. Yes, right on top of the Queen's Domain in the heritage-listed Coast Wireless Station. You never know, we might get you in front of the camera or behind doing one of the many roles during the night. We get underway with our program on a Wednesday night from 7:30 p.m. local time. We'll see you soon. This is VK7 OTC.
Okay, this is VK7 OTC, the club station of the Radio and Electronics Association of Southern Tasmania with our DATV Experimenters Night. And greetings from, and seasons greetings, special seasons greetings. We're in that in-between period of Christmas and New Year. And hello to Sean and Ron and Ken over in ZL. So Ken, I've been trying to work ZL on 6 metres. So, not having too much luck, but I'll get there. I'll definitely get there. There'll be more openings. The 6 metres magic band has been coming and going as you would expect. So there you go. Anyway, before we commence, I wish to acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the knowledge and the culture and hopes of Aboriginal Tasmania. Now tonight we've got a bit of a presentation on the new for VK amateurs, not for Ken. So Ken, you can go and grab a cup of coffee if you like. But for VK amateurs, the new class license, it was announced just recently on the 19th of February is the day, and everything in the relation to the new license and also the assessor conditions and where assessments are done and all sorts of things happens all on the 19th of February. So I thought it was very timely to go through a bit of it's just a quick presentation around what is the class license, how is it constructed, what are the main elements of it, etc., etc. So there's a bit of a presentation. We've also got, if I go over to here, you'll notice that there is a mag loop using a bit of inch heliax sitting next to me, which we'll go through next. And then if we've got some time, I'll go through the latest edition of DUBUS magazine, which is if you're into microwaves and above, this is the magazine in the world that you should be subscribing to. So, let's get underway with, okay, that's excellent, and go over here, and if I push this button marked slideshow, I hope, excellent. So, there we go. So, key date I mentioned, 19th of February 2024. On that date, The class license for amateur radio commences. There is a transition period, which I'll go through, and some of the transition elements that we need to go through. And also on that date, the AMC, the Australian Maritime College, hands back Callsign and assessment services to the ACMA. So they have signalled that they do not want to continue the contract, and they're handing it back to the ACMA. And so the ACMA are furiously trying to get together all of the things involved with Callsign administration, and also obviously assessment administration as well. So and there's been a range of webinars that assessors have been attending over the last 3 or 4 months. The last one was just before Christmas, a week before Christmas. So yeah, they're valiantly trying to get things in place. So some of the key instruments which they released about 3 weeks ago. There is the class license, which we're going to be having a look at tonight. There is also the explanatory notes that go along with the class license. Now, the explanatory notes are probably an even more fascinating read than the actual legislation, the actual subordinate legislation, because the explanatory notes are what the lawyers go to when they have to fight something in court. They go straight to the explanatory statements, because the explanatory statements are how the legislation was put together, why the legislation was put together, and why particular clauses are the way they are in the legislation. So really, really fascinating read, and I'll point out a few of the more interesting bits. And there's a couple of other instruments which are required to move from an apparatus license into a class license, and they're the other two there. So I'll put them up on the those links up on the video description, so if people are interested in having a look. Now, I just wanted to do a quick refresher. That's probably a refresher more than anything. A quick refresher as to, under the Radiocommunications Act of 1992, there are 3 different license types which are defined as part of that legislation. The very first one is spectrum licensing. Now, spectrum licensing is a specific part of a spectrum is licensed, and a good example of this is mobile phones. The mobile phone is a spectrum licensed, and the governments around the world make an awful lot of money off of spectrum licensing arrangements in the various countries. They sell off huge amounts of the mobile phone type spectrum for billions of dollars. The second type is apparatus licensing. Now, apparatus licensing is a license to operate a radio communications device to which that license relates to, and this is where we are currently. We are what they call a non-assigned apparatus license. The whole focus is on the actual apparatus and the licensing of that apparatus, and the whole thing around the amateur provisions and amateur qualifications and Callsigns and all sorts of stuff is sort of hung off the side of that. It's sort of bolted onto the apparatus license, which is one of the reasons why the ACMA wanted to move to the class license. And then the third type of license under the Radiocommunications Act is the class license. Now, the class license is a license under which any person may operate radio communications devices that come within or come with a particular term or condition or parameters of that particular license. And what we're going to be doing is, in this presentation, they specify 5 conditions as part of the class license, and the 5 conditions that they have specified under this class license is a qualification, a call sign used to enable identification. There are some permitted frequency bands which we are using, which is obviously the amateur frequencies. There are some prescribed transmitter output limits for amateur stations, and then there is a scary section on electromagnetic energy requirements, so EME requirements for the operation of amateur stations. Now there are some other minor conditions in there which I've got a slide on shortly, but these are the main ones. These are the main conditions that are required under the class license. So what I've structured this presentation, there are now 5 slides, one for each of these areas, to outline in more detail what they mean by each of these. The very first one is a qualification. So we need a qualification. So and there's a whole lot of legal definitions in here. A qualified person is someone who has a recognised qualification, already has a recognition certificate, is visiting Australia but not an Australian resident, has not been in Australia for more than 365 days, holds a recognised overseas qualification, and assigned a call sign on behalf of the country, that particular country's admin. So that's what they call a qualified person. A recognised qualification is either an advanced, a standard, or a foundation, or a overseas equivalent, and they're published on the ACMA website. And there's a little note in there: the ACMA may cancel at any stage, and they need to publish that when they do. So that's one of the operational or the administration side of that particular condition under the class license. The second one is Schedule 4, deals with call signs in the class license. So the ACMA may assign a call sign to a person. This is part of the class license. It's also part of the Radiocommunications Act. The person applies to the ACMA, the call sign's assigned, application can be made in a form approved by the ACMA. Applications are made in a method approved by the ACMA, so it could be any sort of method, could be hard copy, could be online, could be whatever. And the person pays a charge, if any, determined by the ACMA, which they have. They've published those charges for the call sign allocation, which are the same, very similar to the AMC charges. Now, under the class license, though, it now says the ACMA must assign a call sign to a person, a qualified person. Have regards to policies that they have in place. They need to notify that person in writing, and also it is a reviewable decision that they make. So there is a dispute resolution section in the class license, and that's all those procedures for dispute resolution are under Schedule 6. So now there's a transition arrangements, which I'll go into in a few slides' time, which introduce the concept of there being an assignment period for call signs, and I'll cover what that means later. The third condition for the class license is permitted frequency bands. So each license type has bands and power and bandwidth limitations associated with it. The bands that are well known and haven't changed, will not change under the class license for the foundation, standard and advanced level licenses. The bandwidths for foundation, for their 80, 40 and 15, if it's greater than 8 kilohertz, it needs to be less than 1 watt per 100 kilohertz. So this is power density measurements. For the 40 meters DX, it needs to be less than 8 kilohertz. For 10 meters, it needs to be greater. If greater than 16 kilohertz, it needs to meet that power density limit again. And if it's above 2 meters, there is absolutely no limitation. Now, can I just say, this is exactly the same as what it is now, so there's no difference here. All they've done is simplified it. You don't have to go to multiple places to find this. It's all in the class license. The standard, very similar, except of course there are some other variations. There is 10 meters, there is also 50 to 52 and 52 and above. 50 to 52 there is a less than 100 kilohertz bandwidth limit, and 52 megs and above there is no limitation. And then of course with the advanced they also get 2200 meters, which is less than 2.1 kilohertz. On 630 meters it is less than 3 kilohertz, and very similar conditions for everything else. So so that's the bands and the bandwidth conditions. This is condition number 3 under the class license. Condition number 4 is the power. So condition number 4 is for each license type there is power specified. PX and PY is how they, now these are the ITU designations. So there is, this was referred to in the previous one, it's now been simplified. Foundation is 10 watts peak envelope power for everything. For the standard for J3E and R3E it is, so that's sideband and phase, 100 watts peak envelope power. Everything else is 30 watts mean power, so average power, PY. For advanced there are a few different modulation methods in there. Can have 400 watts peak envelope power. Everything else is 120 watts mean power. And for 2200 meters there's 1 watt peak envelope power EIRP, and for 630 meters it's 5 watts peak envelope power EIRP. So, and I wish you luck getting those sort of levels out your antenna on those bands. Condition number 5. So this is the last condition that's specified in the class license. Schedule 1 specifies the electromagnetic emissions requirements. Now when you look at these in the class license, my first reaction to this was, oh my god, I need to be not only a mathematician, I need to be a lawyer, and I need to be a few other things to understand this. No, it's not. It is the same as what we had, same regime, EME regime, as what we had before. What they have done is included all of the relevant documents, the ARPANSA measurement documents, the ARPANSA level documents, etc., etc. They have actually included all of those into the class license. You had to go to a separate document to see all of these in the current arrangements. Sorry, the arrangements we're currently in. You had to go to a separate document, so it's all been included in the class license. So simplified, it's all in one place. So there are, I just noted here, we must not operate if the radio frequency field produced exceeds the reference level for the general public exposure where antennas are accessible by the general public. So that's the umbrella statement, if you like. Slightly different measurement regimes between 10 megs and 30 megs, and 30 megs to 2 gigs, and then 2 gigs and above. So there is slightly different ways that you have to measure using the various standards. There are 2 risk levels, which is what we have now. There is 100 watts and below. It is antennas are not accessible by the general public. They are greater than 10 meters above the ground, and the average total EIRP is less than 3200 watts. Now that sounds absolutely enormous. It's actually where you've got a directional antenna like a Yagi or a dish. A dish is a classic one here. Dish has high gain, so you need, if you're putting in reasonable amounts of power into a dish, you have to make sure that it is below 3200 watts EIRP. So you need to do the calculations. You know the gain of the antenna, you know your input power, you know what is going to be coming out of the front of the antenna. So that's the low risk arrangements. High risk is everybody who is not covered by the low risk conditions. You need to keep records. You need to keep records of your antennas, their gain, etc., etc. And you can use an agent if you want to go into that high risk category where you do actually have to The high risk category means that you have to do all the calculations, you need to have them on site, you need to update them if you change things, etc., etc. In that high risk category, you can use an agent, an RF agent, to actually do those calculations for you. So they're the 5 conditions that are specified as part of the class license. We can operate our class license if we comply with those 5 conditions. So that's as simple as it gets. Now, there are some other license conditions which are specified in different parts of the class license. Part 3 outlines callsign usage. So this is some of the stuff which was a bit of a mix of operational, like standard operating procedure, a bit of custom and practice, a bit of all sorts of things. It's now all included in the class license in the document. There is callsign usage every 10 minutes, the supervision of people who don't have a license, specified times and dates that you can use the AX callsign, when you can use contest callsigns, which is only, funnily enough, during contests, special event callsigns, and the use of VK0 and VK9 callsigns. And that assignment period is one of those things that comes into play, but I'll go into that in a sec. Purpose and transmissions. This is the section. No financial gain. Cannot run a business through amateur radio. That's a no-no. That's still a no-no. No change to that. There are some transmit conditions in there. Obviously, no encoding. So if you're encoding with the desire to hide your transmission, that is actually still illegal. It still is illegal. No advertising. Now, the interesting thing here is they've taken out entertainment. So I thought that was an interesting little nuance there. No advertising, but they've actually taken out the word entertainment. And it covers also automatic modes and computer controlled modes. So they're allowed under the license by all license conditions. Oh dear, oh dear. Have my cup of tea. Now, emergency services, operations and training. There's some conditions that are specified for those areas for emergency services, operations and training. There's a little bit about callsign usage, and also callsign identification is only every 30 minutes if it's under those emergency service, operations and training areas. So that's an interesting nuance. Interference and spurious emissions. There is still a statement in there about causing no harmful interference. That is what we're there for. And also there is a formula specified to calculate spurious emissions and what level they need to be below. So that's all specified. And there's some additional restrictions, namely no operation in 3.4 to 3.6 gigs. There's obviously no operation in spectrum licensed areas, so that covers the mobile phone and a few other areas. And there is no operations in the radio quiet zone in Western Australia. So where the square kilometre array is, there is a radio quiet zone which is legislation, and so you need to be aware of that. There is also radio quiet zones around Mount Pleasant actually as well. There is a radio quiet zone, so interesting, and also Coyne Ridge. So we've got a little southern Tasmanian nuance here that we need to be aware of, which I might go into in a future program. So they're the conditions that are specified in the new class license. It hasn't changed. The key message here, people, is it's not suddenly going to change everything. It's not going to change very much at all. In fact, it's made it a whole lot easier because everything's in the same place, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, there are some transitional arrangements which are in place, consequential, what I'd call in Tasmania consequential amendments, but they don't have consequential amendments in the feds. But they include consequential amendments as part of the transition arrangements. You do not need to apply to the ACMA or pay any fees for your license come the 19th of February 2024. So this is the key thing. It is now a free license as of the 19th of February. You can continue to use your existing call sign. So that is also, unless you surrender it, and that's the next stop point, you can surrender your existing license. So this is your apparatus license, and if you had paid your license fee after the 9th of December, then you potentially have or are eligible for a refund. Now there are some conditions around the refund, but if you paid your license fee after the 9th of December, then you are eligible for a refund. You need to surrender your apparatus license and you can specify that you want to surrender your apparatus license on the 19th of February so that you have a continuation of license. And if an amateur licensee does not wish to surrender their license, well, their license continues through until the end of their apparatus license, whatever that date is. So there is a bit of an overlap here of both licenses. January 2024, the ACMA is going to write out to everybody, all amateurs in Australia, all existing non-assigned apparatus amateur licenses, to outline the key transmission arrangements, confirm your qualification level and your call signs that you currently hold. So that's coming out in the not too distant future. For advanced licensees travelling overseas, the confirmation letter that you will then receive will also be the document you can show the authorities overseas to prove that you have CEPT and HARIC equivalent licenses, so that you can actually operate your amateur radio license in those CEPT and HARIC and other countries where we have arrangements with those countries. So, call signs from the 19th of February 2024 will have an assignment period. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier. What that means is they will then have an end date put on them. Now, most of them will be in perpetuity, so they'll have an end date which is way, way off in the future, and until the assignee no longer requires it and they surrender their call sign, the ACMA will check with call sign assignees every 5 years to see whether they are, number one, are still alive, number two, you still require your call sign, etc. VK0 and VK9 contest and special events call signs now will have an assignment period of 12 months. So contest call signs and VK0, VK9 will only be assigned for a 12-month period, and then they'll expire and you will need to renew them. So contest call signs, so the 4-letter contest call sign, you will need to renew every year. Contest call sign assignment period will be revised to align with the end of the first anniversary of their expiry date. So there is no need to do anything until it comes up to an expiry date, and then it will be 12 months assignment on a rolling basis from there. So now, RADCOM. Now, the Radiocommunications, the Register of Radiocommunications and Radio Licensing, RADCOM, will no longer, as of the February 2024, will no longer contain amateurs in the RADCOM database. There is a separate Callsign Register that the ACMA, I understand, is working on. That Callsign Register will have in it the ability to search a call sign, whether it will come up with whether that call sign is assigned, available or reserved. And if that call sign is assigned, it will give you the qualification level of that call sign. It will not give you the name of the amateur. And this is to meet privacy requirements, ongoing privacy, and the Personal Information Protection Act, etc., requirements. So you can look up a call sign and know whether it is a foundation standard and advanced, and whether it's assigned or not. So there you go. That's what will replace what is in RADCOM right at the moment. Now, some other stuff. This is the final slide. I find this fascinating because whenever legislation is put up to Parliament or put through the below the line stuff, which is what this has gone through, where it sits on the floor of Parliament for X amount of time and any objections, etc., when any legislation goes through, it has to meet a whole lot of regulatory requirements and also human rights implications, if there are any, for this particular legislation. Now, in the submission that the explanatory notes that the ACMA put together, they outlined that there were no regulatory or human rights implications, and they actually named up the human rights implications as they are compatible with human rights because they promote the right to freedom of expression by maintaining the ability of amateur licensees to exercise that right through the operation of amateur stations. So I thought that was an interesting nuance. They are actually using our amateur license to support the fact that we have freedom of expression, because we can obviously contact and discuss with other countries and people all of the things that amateur stations, amateur operators do when they contact people over the air. So I just thought that was an interesting little nuance there. So anyway, that's the presentation that I put together. I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea, little bit of a better idea about our class license. If there are any questions, please drop them into the chat or email me or contact me. There's a few more. Hello, Andy. 2E0REE. We've got Murray. Hello, Murray. Good evening from White Rock. Oh my goodness, wherever that is. And we've got David Bannister. So fantastic. Now, here we go. Sean, question re antenna accessibility. What about antennas on vehicles and handheld devices? I'm glad you asked. These are actually covered as part of the description in the class license. Mobiles are obviously a whole lot less power. It's a quarter of the 100 watts. So that's taken into account. And antennas, the interesting thing about antennas is they are accessible by the general public. Are they accessible if they are actually transmitting? You have control, the amateur has control of the transmitter, and so it is upon the amateur to obviously not transmit when the general public is close to their antenna. So there you go. So, but there is a section in the class license which does cover mobile operation. So it is covered, Sean, and worth a look in the explanatory notes. So we do cover base and home operation and also mobile operation. Will the RADCOM replacement list detail amateur repeaters? Okay, now RADCOM will. Exactly, and an excellent question, Sean. They certainly will, and thanks, Muzz. They certainly will, because beacons and repeaters remain as assigned apparatus licenses. So they are, and if you think about it, it is all about the equipment at the site. So the repeater that is at the site, the power that's used in the repeater, the mode that the repeater uses, etc., etc. So that is actually the right application for an apparatus license. So beacons and repeaters remain apparatus licenses. The nuance is that they need to be associated with what they class as a natural person. So this is an area that's being explored at the moment. And so instead of it being able to be assigned to a club, it will need to be assigned to a particular person. So that's something we need to work through. So yeah. So beacons and repeaters will continue in RADCOM, and everybody else's class licenses will be in the new register. So I hope that clarifies it for you. But if there's any other questions, please drop them into the chat. Now let's do a time check. It's 8:05. Okay. I showed you this vacuum capacitor a little while ago. This vacuum capacitor is 4 to 100 picofarads. It's come from Kazakhstan. It is new old stock. Those people who know what that means will know what that means. And today I silver soldered these brackets onto the two plates on the vacuum capacitor. The bottom one is a plate that allows there's a hole in that plate which allows the vacuum seal, and then the shaft for which moves these bellows backwards and forwards. And there's a whole lot of concentric rings up in the top of here that go together with a whole lot of concentric rings to give you the 4 to 100 picofarads, and this provides full travel with 22.5 turns from 4 through until 100 picofarads. This is inch heliax, so this is someone will be able to tell me LDF something and something. LDF 450? No, LDF something else 50. Anyway, Muzz, you should know this. So this is heliax. It is silver soldered to these copper brackets. These are pure copper brackets. The silver solder is 45% silver solder, and that's the highest silver component for silver solder you can buy. So what I'm trying to do here is get down the ohmic losses down to the characteristics of the heliax, which I'll do some measurements and make sure that that's the case. There is some jointing compound in here, aluminox, which is conductive, has conductive crystals in it, and also keeps the moisture out. It's a greasy sort of grey substance they use on electrical joints. And now I've just put, this is a very temporary little coil, connecting coil, because I put the nano VNA on here to make sure that it actually performed across the range of frequencies that I wanted it to perform on, that I actually designed it for, and it does. It goes from below 21 megahertz, just below, so about 20 megahertz through to 60 megahertz. So and there are some dips at the relevant points. I just need to play with this coupling coil a little bit, because a coupling coil on a magnetic loop has to be a fifth of the area of the actual main loop for it to have effective coupling. And I don't think I've got that quite right. And I was actually going to use a piece of LDF 450, so smaller heliax, for the coupling loop, but I was running out of time and I needed to test it. So this is a 6 to 15 meter magnetic loop. It looks as if it's performing within spec, which is fantastic. So this is the next magnetic loop. The next job here is to put it into a mounting tube and try and protect all of this from the weather and all of that sort of stuff, as well as obviously get a drive onto this shaft so that I can vary the capacitance and tune tune the magnetic loop to the frequency that I actually want it on. Having some spectacular contacts on 20 meters using the bigger loop, the loop that I did the presentation on. So I'm really looking forward to some 6 meter openings and seeing how that compares with my 4-element Yagi, 6 meter 4-element Yagi. So yeah, and in fact that reminds me, a big shout out to Tony, VK7XTC, who had a significant birthday yesterday. So big shout out to Tony, who's been doing some magic stuff on satellites, and also he's got his 6 meter beam up as well. So everybody's looking for those openings, those 6 meter openings. Now, what I'll do, I might go through just one article out of the this DUBUS magazine. There, and the article I'm going to go through is ooh, that was close. We just had a near failure on the 6 meter loop. Now, the very first article in this edition is one by a regular contributor, and I'll see how we go here. Okay, now let's go to here. Joachim Koppen, who is DF3GJ, who is part of the team of DL0SHF. So they do a lot of, they're a university-based group of microwave antennas, amateurs, microwave experimenters, who do some fantastic work and contribute lots of their research and their experiments into DUBUS magazine. He talks about getting atmospheric attenuation and the noise figure from a sky profile. So anybody who has operated above 10 gigs, and I cite Rex, VK7MO, who has done a fair bit of work on 24 gigs. One of the things about 24 gigs, well, anything above 20 gigs, is atmospheric absorption can be dramatic. And there's an interesting little, what I might do, I'll see if I can blow this up. It's a wonderful little diagram here that they put together. Don't know whether you can pick up. There is the red line, the red curve here, is the dry air absorption peaks. The blue is for water vapor, and the black is the sum of the two. So the black is probably the, if you like, the average of the two. But you can see, and it's a logarithmic scale down the bottom here. This is 1 gig, 10 gigs, 100 gigs, 1,000 gigs. So you can see there are some dramatic attenuation, and this is attenuation in dB up the side. There are some peaks at 20 megs, and there is a peak at about 60 gigs, and there are a range of other peaks along here, which are anything up to, what's that, anything up to thousands of dB attenuation, so absolutely no signal will be getting through. So one of the things that they talk about in here is when you go out and you try and operate, you can get these figures from a variety of sources, but they are usually not in the location that you're in, and potentially could vary. And so they've come up with a JavaScript application which enables you to put in a whole lot of parameters, and you can actually work out what the absorption figure is for your particular application. And you can see here the sky profile on 24 gigs done with the 3.7 meg dish at DL0 SHF, and you can see over a particular time, and we're talking about This is 2050, this is 2100, so this is a 10-minute period. This is another 10 minutes, so we're looking at like 30 minutes here. You can see it's gone from 0.76, 5, 10, 15, 20, etc., etc. It varies dramatically over that 30-minute period, so absolutely phenomenal. So it does pay for you to be able to calculate this locally, and at the time that you're actually trying to make the contact, so that you've got the best chance of getting a signal through. So this is a screen grab of the JavaScript application, and it's just, and they've made this freely available. So lots of the links and etc. And DUBUS is a bilingual magazine, so it's in English, and then the article is in German. So that's just the one article that I was going to go through. There are some others in here. The next one is by Charlie Suckling, who is now DL3WDG on offset feed dish horns, and we'll leave that for another time. But anyway, DUBUS magazine. This is number 4 of 2023, so the last quarter magazine. This appeared in my mailbox just before Christmas. So absolutely wonderful magazine. If you're into microwave experimentation, this is the magazine. CQVHF I don't think exists anymore, but that was the other magazine, and DUBUS continues really high quality production of the magazine, and has some fantastic articles, and very often has an article from Rex and his experimentations. The last one had the aurora propagation as well. So yeah. Now, interesting how the attenuation peaks line up with some frequencies used by commercial terrestrial point-to-point data links. Yeah, spot on. And I cite there were some, although it's up in the terahertz, so it's optical, but there were some optical links around Hobart that used to suffer when the Jerry rolled in too, which was always interesting. Suddenly there was an awful lot of attenuation because of the fog. So fog equals lots of moisture in the water column. Anyway, fantastic, thank you. So just to remind you now, we finish off with our space weather report. Our space weather report, there are a couple of warnings actually in space weather. There are no HF comms warnings. However, there is a HF fade out warning. There are on the 24th, 25th and 26th. Now we are the 27th, so this is past. But there were some kind of fade out possible. There is a geomagnetic warning for the 27th and 28th, so there is geomagnetic activity forecast. It is a G0, G1 on the 27th, so today, and a G0 chance of G1 on the 28th, so tomorrow. So several slow and glancing CME impacts may eventuate over the 27th and 28th. I love it. This is like a Reserve Bank statement. You know, you have to dig into the nuances of the words. Hi. 2024, our next DATV night is on the 3rd of January, so we'll be in the new year, into 2024 already. Our first presentation night is February the 7th. It is Greg Bird from the Surf Lifesaving Tasmania giving us a presentation on their pretty extensive radio network. And on a week or so later, on the February the 18th, is the REAST AGM and Special General Meeting. So that's February's looking, and then on the 24th, a week later, we have our assessment, our first assessment under the ACMA. So that will always be an interesting experience. So February's pretty full. Anyway, I wish you a happy new year for 2024. Stay safe. Hope to see you in 2024, and our next DATV Experimenters Nights is next Wednesday the 3rd of January, and we've got, I'll say a word and you might want to look it up or you may not want to look it up, but Neo-Lucinda. We'll have whatever a Neo-Lucinda is. So if you know that particular device, it is a fairly old device, but it's been reborn in an outsourcing arrangement. So Neo-Lucinda, that's the word of the week that I'll leave you with, and bid you a happy new year, and we'll see you next week. 73.